to the presentations. But our last panel focuses on the digital world and response to illicit cultural property. So why do we talk about digital world? The digital world has changed the movement of cultural goods as well as the protection of these goods. We put together this panel in order to see how the safety and daily work is influenced by internet, by data analysis. I'm very grateful to the presentation made by Dr. Hardy. It was a surprise to see that much information is available. Digital platforms allow us to boast of and share whatever. And actually, these platforms are an excellent venue to identify people who are involved in illicit trafficking. We have slight changes in the agenda. Many thanks to Christiana, who introduced us to the osta.ee platform. But actually, I'm thinking about the comment that the better the osta.ee is, the more collaboration, the less attractive it will be for the people involved in illegal trafficking. Well, that's life. But it's important to talk about the digital aspect of Estonia, as our National Heritage Board has taken care of the museum heritage. This is already available on the web. If there are no legislative restrictions, copyright or data protection restrictions, the heritage is freely available and usable. And actually, Estonian museums are already in the common space. But what does it involve for us? This was the leading questions when I thought about organizing this specific panel. I do hope the upcoming presentations will help to clarify the situation, how to use safely and wisely the atmosphere. But now the amendment to our agenda. Christine Meos regrettably has fallen ill. It's the Estonian climate in spring. Our weather is very volatile. And our first speaker will be in this panel, Kim Covent. That's a surprise to Kim Covent, but he is ready to speak. Kim is a police advisor from Ghent local police. But how come he is here? But he's very active also in ICOM, in the Committee of Museum Security. We met at one of the ICOM events with Kim. Has been 15 years as a police advisor.
Siis sellise ürituse asutaja või
But he's also founder of such an institute as Ghent Research Institute for Art and Cultural Heritage, Crime and Law Enforcement. Grace, in brief.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today here at this really interesting conference, and also a way for me to learn so much about the north of Europe within my experience and within my job. Let me go back. Here is back. Yeah. So, yes, I work also in a local police force. It was great to hear a colleague of mine this morning from the Estonian police talking about a case. I'm not really going to talk about cases. I'm more going to talk about like a general view, the helicopter view about what I'm doing. So I work with the local police as well, but I do have more experience with art crime in general. And I was asked to talk about data here, about how we can share data and how we also have to share responsibility. And I'm talking about law enforcement and about the academic sector, but mostly the heritage sector, how we can both help each other to protect cultural heritage. So as I showed this picture before, and this is me, so I work in Ghent, which is the third largest city of the country of Belgium. We also have the third largest police force and the third largest museum of fine arts. I've been working with the police for 15 years there, and I'm an advisor to the chief of police. And I do quite a number of different types of crime prevention projects, and one of them is on art crime and the prevention of art crime. In 2017, I started working with this museum. This is our Museum of Fine Arts in Ghent. It was because we started a project on predictive profiling, which is something that, especially in Belgium and the Netherlands, we tried out for a while to see if people were planning something in a preventive measure. We stopped calling it preventive profiling or predictive profiling because of the bad connotation that the word profiling had. And now we just talk about advanced observation techniques. And I also teach in that as well. So I kind of rolled into that world because of behavior analysis, because of observation techniques, but I loved it and I stayed. Now, what is famous about this museum in particular? That is this very famous piece of art. It's huge. It's a triptych. This is the Ghent centerpiece. And it's been renovated for years in the museum that I just showed you. Now it hangs in the Ghent Cathedral, and the police is usually involved when they're moving pieces of the painting between the museum where they're restored and the cathedral. So we are always called upon, so we do have this service that we provide to, of course, the museums, the city museums, and then the cathedral. Now take a good look at the outline of this painting, and then you can see how it is incorporated in this logo. And this is grace that Tiina was talking about. Now, what is grace? What happened is that, as many countries, we in Belgium, we have a federal police. So I'm local police. We have a federal police, and the federal police has a crime unit, an art crime unit. Like the Carabinieri in Italy, like the Netherlands, they have their own dedicated team. So we had that as well. But actually, with the retirement of one of the last inspectors working there, it fell flat. And it looked like we didn't have anybody working there. And that wasn't good. And we got a lot of complaints, especially from the neighboring countries. And it was hard to communicate internationally. And at the same time, I started working with the museums in Ghent together with the chief commissioner. At the same time, we were like writing papers and talking to people who were at the Ghent University. And we said, let's put our hands together and do something. Like put art crime again on the agenda. And we did by creating a network. So we call this the Ghent Research Institute for Art and Cultural Heritage, Crime and Law Enforcement. So it's a little bit forced, but it's all in there. So it is actually a combination of law enforcement, the Ghent police, with the city of Ghent and the Ghent museums, and the University of Ghent. So this is really this is a triple helix. I don't know if you heard about that, but it's a triple helix, and we're also including quadruple because there's a lot of corporate security and corporate organizations interested in working with us. And we're also expanding a lot beyond Ghent. We have members who are from the Netherlands, from different cities in the country. And people are actually saying, shouldn't you drop the G because of Ghent if you want to expand? But anyway, it's a network to connect expertise, a lot of students, academic work, research and papers we're trying to do. But we also support law enforcement and the museums that are part of our membership. Tiina especially said, say something else about it, but I do put it always in my presentation because we're kind of proud of this. We invited the Minister of Culture when we opened and started this, and because of this push, we actually have people again working at the National Art Crime Unit, and we are actually making a bit more of an effort than, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago. But I'm here actually to talk about what law enforcement and the heritage sector do together when there's a problem. Because we're talking about illicit trafficking. Now that means that the objects are illegal, illicit, they're stolen, they're dug up. So what happens? Let me give you this overview. I'm going to simplify and talk about theft, although it's about a lot more. What happens after a theft? And what happens then? What's the response, which is the investigation? Now, I'm actually very happy that I heard a lot of people say today that they don't go to the police. I'm not happy. It hurts me. I feel sad. I want that people go to the police when something goes wrong, when something gets stolen. But it's true that it's not happening that often. Now, let's say it's now the example is theft, but it can be anything. Being something missing, something's being looted, something that has false provenance, something that is being part of insurance fraud, whatever. So if something happens, and I'm talking about two big categories, which is the private citizen, who happens something to him or her, or the institution, which can be a museum or a research center. Now these people, when something happens, you say, where do we have to go to and who do we talk to? Well, you have to go to the police because you have to make a report, right? If you crash your car and you want the insurance to do something about it, you have to report it to the police. So you go to the police. That's for the reporting. Now, I'll be super fair. This is where a lot of things go wrong on both sides. Like the people who are coming to report, I will give you an overview of what goes wrong on that side, but also at the receiving end. The police is also not an easy partner in this interaction. We know, we are aware, especially because it's local police. Local police are not experts on this at all. I'll come back to this with other examples. But the thing is, we were talking about databases, and I'll come back to Interpol as well. But the way that the news travels is that you have to report something in your hometown where something happens. That police force is going to give that to the national database. And the national database, especially all the ones in Europe, are connected to the Interpol database. So it has to follow that structure for your stolen object to be part of the international stolen art database. It all starts at home. There's maybe a few big institutions that can jump straight to the federal units, but usually it starts in your hometown. Now, finally, we have heard Sophie talk about this as well. But what happens in the investigation? Well, you need to know a lot of data about the stolen object or elements. Then has to go, as I said, through all these different databases. And it almost always goes to the international level, because that's where heritage crime happens. Belgium is also one of those transit countries. Not necessarily a transit country from where people pass through, but really a hub We have, just like Amsterdam, we have Antwerp, a harbor, we have Brussels, an airport that has a lot of transit. Usually if an item has been stolen, it passes through Belgium or the Netherlands somehow. So unfortunately, we're a big hub. Unfortunately, it means a lot of international collaboration. All right. Now my story today is data sharing and results. What happens? First phase, usually no data, right? We have heard a lot of case studies, and I'm, again, happy that I come at the end almost to give you an overview, but many times there's no data. That can be for several reasons. I'll dive into them, but most of the time it's because either it's not really known that there's a theft or something's going on, or it's not going to be reported. And then you have stories like what Sam was telling you. That's also somewhere in there. There's like data, but it's on social media, and can we use it? And is it going to the police? So that's the whole data story. Is it there? Yes, maybe, but it's not being used, so you cannot share. So how can you get results? Impossible. Now, the other thing is, let's say there's data, you have an inventory, you report, but there's no sharing. Nobody's sharing information. Again, I'll dive into the reasons why, but it can block completely at this level as well. So the sharing responsibility is not just the reporting, but it's also what happens after. So who is supposed to share, collaborate, pass on information, work on the international level? And then to be completely optimistic, let's end with the fact that if you have data and if you share, you can get results, maybe. Let's say maybe. That's not true. It's not like we have a 100% case solvents. That's not true. Although I did like, again, that the example that we dove in this morning is the one where we did find the Georgian group who stole all these books, in the north of Europe. So basically, that's the framework. Now, let's take a look at the first part. The first part is data. And I'm not going to give statistics or big graph or anything. It's really concepts. Because first of all, there's a lot of zombie statistics, we call them, in the art world. Zombie statistics means that we say like, oh, the art world is the third largest economy in the world, or dark economy in the world. 80% is going in that direction, and 90%. And that's not true. We don't know. We just keep repeating other people's numbers. There are some numbers, and it's best to go to the Interpol website and the Europol website for details. Problem is that there's so much underreporting, and that's what the slide is about. Now, before, and I think most of the reasons on the slide we have heard already in one form or another. So it's like you don't want to say that something got stolen because of the reputational risk. It says your fear of looking vulnerable or negligent, like we did something wrong. We heard this explicitly this morning, right, from the library. No, you did not do something wrong because somebody stole from you. If somebody stole from you, you're a victim and somebody was a bad guy. Now, the thing is, let's think about somebody stole in your house. It's embarrassing, but you're going to tell the police, you're going to report because this happens. Anyway, not all of the thefts are big ones, so it's not always that journalists are looking at the door and are going to interview. But I understand that there's a reputational risk, but you should really prevent and talk about this with your board of directors or your team, like mitigate this. What are we going to do in the event of a theft? Prepare for it so that you know we're going to report. Second one, legal uncertainty. Yes, what are we going to report to whom and what's going to happen next? If you don't know what the process is like, it's more scary than when you know what's going to happen. So in this presentation, I tell you, you report, and then there's like, the database is going to the other country. We have to connect with international colleagues. You heard also how it worked this morning in the Estonian example. But it helps to know this. So inform yourself, like, what's the process? Who are my contacts? And realize that you have to go and tell the police. So there's less uncertainty. Fear of consequences, that is a big one. Liabilities, audits, sanctions, exposures. I don't think anybody wants to work in the Louvre right now after what's happened there. So we do know that's true. But it's in every sector. Whether you work in the nuclear world or you work in banking or insurance, that is true, but it shouldn't keep you from doing what you're supposed to do. Now, I did hear something about low perceived value or low recovery expectation, which is another reason why you wouldn't go to the police. You think, is it really worth it? This is not, it's like a page from a folder, and there's just a few pages missing. What is for you the moment, and it says there below as well, the threshold, at what moment are you going to declare something necessary to go to the police? This is also something you have to tell within yourself, your organization first. Make sure you know what are these thresholds. And if you think they're not going to find it anyway, you still have to report. It's like when your bike gets stolen in Belgium or the Netherlands. You're not going to find your bike. But please add to the statistics. We need to know. It helps these numbers. So what else does it say? Yes, poor data quality. Let's say you found out, in the library, you found out it's been missing, but already for a few months. So you don't have camera images or footage, you don't have enough witnesses. All these elements are a reason why you wouldn't report maybe, but again, consider that. We do know that there's a lot of thefts and insider thefts happening from depots, from locations where you have art that has been forgotten or that hasn't been inventorized. So it's not because you don't have the data that you shouldn't share and report. Limited resources, maybe if you are a not too big institution or you're a church, that happens a lot there. And then the last one I don't like, again, but let's be honest, there is also a lot of mistrust or distance towards law enforcement. Now, when you're in the west of Europe, it's not usually a problem, but we have heard about countries where it's the police who is actually stealing and looting. It happens. There is corruption, we are aware. So if that's the reason why you don't report, we can understand and again, try to find a way. Maybe you can go to corporate security, or maybe you can go to a country where you have reasonable connections, or you can use your university network and go in that way to different nations and declare something stolen, maybe. So this is not an exhaustive list. It's just something to make you think and a lot of these data points is actually what I would, point towards you as a sector. Can we work on this? Can we prepare for this? Is this avoidable or not? And now I have a few examples from the news. They're not small, they're big. And the first one here is last year in the Tartu Museum in Assen in the Netherlands, there was Romanian gold stolen. This was, I think, a big news item in most places, so we do know about this. I think it's because it's in the Netherlands, they communicated quite transparently about it, so it wasn't hidden that this happened. But there are some interesting tidbits about this news fact. For example, that crown, that golden crown, is extremely important for the country of Romania. And they loaned it, or they lent it to the Netherlands, to that museum. And they were so extremely upset and angry that it got stolen during that period that they wanted to sue the museum security team. And as Sophie yesterday mentioned, I am part of the ICOM security work group. And that was really a very tense and stressful period of time, because if you work in museum security and they're going to blame you for a theft within the resource and circumstances that you have, and this was actually a heist, like an armed robbery, then the thing is, we can all just, quit our day job and look for something else, right? So they were really thinking about liabilities directly to them and their job, which is one thing that I really remember how upsetting that was for the museum security world. Another tidbit is the objects were found again. There was a big investigation going on with several countries involved. They did find most of the people who did it, and they retrieved, I think, all but one bracelet of the gold objects that were stolen. So first of all, a very happy ending that the crown, that very important crown for Romania, had been retrieved and could be given back to them before it got melted into something else, because that's what they usually do when they steal gold and so on. But what else? We probably know that the objects were returned in exchange for sentence reduction, which is something that sometimes is a reason why organized crime groups steal art in the first place. So they steal art because, or cultural heritage items, because of high value, because they pay each other, for example, organized networks among themselves. You know, you cannot launder all your money, so they just, pay each other in paintings in gold. What else? Because they want to, for example, blackmail the institution. Like, we stole something, it's worth 16 million euros. If you give us 1 million euros, we'll just give it back to you, but just give us the money. It's like a kidnapping, it's called art napping. But in this case, they had art that they said, like, in case we get caught for some reason, whether it's this crime or another crime, because they do usually some human trafficking or other smuggling or drugs. So the moment we get caught, maybe we can negotiate for some reduction. And this is what supposedly happened in this case, which is not such a good thing, because it's the way I understood, actually, but this is informally, I heard last year that from the Dutch people, they said, like, we're not doing this anymore. But clearly it happened again, which is not good, because this will encourage organized groups to do this actually again. So that was this one. Then the other one I want to bring up, even though we all know about it, the one in the Louvre. Why am I bringing this up? It's not because of the prevention and the security of the museum, but it's about how do citizens, civilians, look at the theft of art. You know, I heard the words, it sounds like a movie. It sounds like a thriller already today. It often sounds like that because it's like a heist. It's like Ocean's 11. It's like complicated, and it's like, oh, there's people made plans, and it's over a lot of months, and it's international. But this is not good, because many times we feel like the public doesn't really know what we are protecting and why. And if it becomes such a pop culture story, you still don't have that. It still doesn't resonate. They don't really know why it matters. In France, it matters because it was their jewels that were stolen. But if you make it into this big story, it's very hard as a museum security professional or somebody working against art crime to really get the message through that this is a serious business, because it doesn't link with the story in the news. Yes, and then I wanted to show this because this connects with the databases. Interpol has the information stored, so you can find what has exactly been stolen, what does it look like. I remember, like, from the first months, they were all assuming they'll end up in Antwerp. As you may know, Antwerp has a very large diamond district, and they'll definitely end up there, but as far as reports are, I'm not involved in the investigation, but probably not yet. And what I also wanted to say with this slide is, unfortunately, we also have two different goals, law enforcement and the heritage sector. What does law enforcement want? We want to find the guys and prosecute them, and maybe avoid that it happens next time. What does the heritage sector want? They want to retrieve the objects. So that sometimes clashes, because if somebody from the institution gets the message like, leave the police out of it, it's like in a kidnapping movie, we will give you back some of the stolen artifacts if you pay us, they would even prefer this to the investigation that the police is running, right? So you see that we don't have always the same objective when we are working in that type of investigations. Now I have a video coming up. I'll just play it, and then after I'll comment. Let's see if it works.
No one told me about the $10 million 3-minute art heist from March? Sorry, was that just two small potatoes now that we had a $103 million Louvre heist? I mean, this one is being described as one of the fastest museum heists in recent history. 4 people walked off with a Cézanne, a Renoir, and a Matisse painting. Granted, they weren't huge paintings, but they were even going for a 4th, and when they triggered the alarm, they just dropped it, hopped the fence, and fled. Oh, well, maybe I didn't hear about it because the museum kept it secret for a week, hoping that the thieves would just come back? The founder of Art Recovery International said that they learned from the Louvre that you can just get into any museum if you cover your face and move quickly enough. Are laws and rules just an illusion? But also, what is everyone doing with the paintings? Stolen paintings are notoriously hard to sell. Even on the black market, they go for 10% of their value. And then, like, what do you even do with it if you buy it? Like, if you have a party and the Renoir is just on the wall, aren't you worried someone is gonna turn you in or, I don't know, steal it from you? Apparently, they're used as bargaining chips for law enforcement, or they're ransomed back to the museums for a finder's fee, but less than 10% of stolen art is ever recovered, so that's not even really happening. There's just a bunch of artwork out there and no one's even showing it at parties. Or are they?
The reason why I show this is because what does the public know? That stuff. You know, they don't know what we know. We don't communicate really with them. These types of videos on TikTok and Instagram, and I follow a bunch of them that talk about not just the news, but also about the art news, about the museums in the world, about cultural heritage in the world. He's quite informed. He knows what he's talking about. And this is what people know, what this guy is saying, not what we are saying. Well, he is wrong at one point when, you know, the thugs are kissing the police. No, they negotiate with the prosecution and with the people from the legal system, not necessarily from the police. I wanted to get that straight. But the thing is, we don't really control the information that they have. So if we want to tell people that it's important to protect our cultural heritage, our identity, that this is not just about some elite, high-priced objects for the rich people, then that's the message that we want to get out there. And that's also what I usually want to try to convince people about. Now, so this was my setup, and now let's take a look at what the reality looks like, because this is now one of those object ID forms that we have in Belgium. It has actually exactly what Sophie was pointing out, a standardized set of categories to show people how to describe the art, the cultural artifacts that they have in their possession. And when they're stolen, they need to go to the police and they fill out this together with one of our inspectors. Now, first of all, our inspectors, they have to find this somewhere in their computer. They're overloaded with documents and different types of report files. So it's really very hard for them to really get to this. And then everything that is about data in digital systems starts here, actually. We have had people who had art stolen from them, and they couldn't really tell you what was the size. It's like this, maybe. Or they have a picture from their last family reunion or a family dinner where there's the painting in the background. And they're like, that's the painting that's stolen. So they don't have an inventory. Sometimes we're looking at the description of, it's a painting of a boy and a mule. And that's it. So it's sometimes very hard. And it's because of the owners, but also because of the police officers involved who either didn't use this form, even though they're supposed to. I mean, it's not mandatory, but they're supposed to. Or it's, of course, because the people did not have any of that information. It is better, though, when you're going to professional institutions, because they do have their inventories where they can rely on, except for all the pieces that are not in the inventory because they're still in stock or in depots or they're not being transferred. We also know that there's thefts going on. I'll have an example later on. For example, art that is not like the highest value art that the institutions have, and they give it to the city hall, or it's in a government building for decoration in the office of a minister. And it's very easy to forget about these items that are there, these objects, and those are the ones that got lost as well. So object ID is a great way to start. And I think everybody should realize that we have to help both the citizens and the police who have to work with that to really know that this is where you have to start. And maybe even look at insurance companies, because we all have these forms for our cars, electronics, but maybe we should include thinking about artifacts as well. Now, just to be complete, there's the Pandora operations that Europol does. Those are the digital ones. They scour the internet with a team. It's usually once a year. I mean, I've been invited, but I'm an administrative personnel of the police. I'm not an officer, an acting officer, operational, but I have colleagues who go there, and it's great. It's super intense. They go like 5 days or 9 days with 10 people or 15 people. And then they go to the places like the selling platforms that we saw, and they're actually with all the experts in the room or on video calls, finding and trying to find and locate all the stolen art. But many times they have not been reported as stolen, or they're mostly stuff that is like on the red list, the ICOM red list, and so on. Unfortunately, I cannot say more about it, but that is maybe something for a next conference, for somebody else to explain. What I can explain is the ID art for Interpol, which is, in our community, it seems like, oh yeah, everybody knows about this, but nobody really knows about this because they don't keep their arts in there. That is one thing. The second thing I wanted to say about this is, like, let's say you are on a flea market in Brussels. You're looking at antiquities, or you're doing like one of those markets. You go around people's garage sales. Some of these people are looking for the next big find. They want to find like a real artist that is worth the millions, and that's going to be their lottery ticket, right? These people are not necessarily going to use ID art for what it's used, for what it's meant to be used. So they're going to look at it, but they have this information like, I find something, is it a real found? Does it come from somebody's attic, or has this been stolen? And then they can decide what we're going to do with it. So it's interesting, it's necessary. It has also the stolen art that has come from all the different countries with their databases, and they put it in there. But for example, I think 2 years ago, we had a student from the university who did a thesis thesis on the usefulness of ID art for museums. And the Museum of Ghent was actually involved. And there's a problem with the way that you can put your inventory elements in ID art. It doesn't transfer really easy. And we have heard a lot of, and this is a digital issue, about transference of data from one system to another. Let's say your museum buys a new system and your inventory has to be funneled to the other one. It's usually a disaster and takes forever because of all the different categories and all the different ID marks, they don't fit. And that's the same if you want to share it with other people, or for example with Interpol and the ID art. That was the conclusion actually of our investigation. Unfortunately. But it's better that we have something than nothing, right? So that's good. And then we have the ICOM red list. So we heard from Sophie exactly what it is and what it's used for. The one thing that I would like to point out, and because I see myself as ambassador for law enforcement, is that when you are in a police precinct, anybody can come to you. They can be like harassed and stalked. They can have their car stolen, and they can talk to you about, I found something on the market that's probably illicit, trafficked heritage. So this guy or this lady who's sitting there, she needs to have everything at her fingertips. She needs to know, what am I supposed to do when it's about fishing, but also what's about when somebody complains that they are a victim of violence, and about this. So it's not like the red list is on their walls. So we need to find out, how do we get that information to local police? How do we make them think about this? And my example actually is this. So the neighborhood cops, the guys who go to your house when you just moved in and who walk around the neighborhood, they're the ones that, for example, go into small stores to see if they're not laundering money, like the little where they sell tobacco, let's say like cigarettes, and they sell, or night shops, and they have like all these chips and drinks. Let's say they go in there to check if these people have permits, and then they see on the floor, because this really happened, a few carton boxes filled with heritage artifacts. like little statues and something. Do you think that this neighborhood cop is an expert and knows what he is seeing or she is seeing? No, she does not. This person thought it was strange because why is that in the shop? And it was a lady, she actually thought it were filled with drugs. So that's the reason why it got reported. She saw a box filled with artifacts. She thought, oh, they're probably smuggling drugs, and that's why it got investigated. But see how sometimes you have to get into the world and the thinking of the people who are the frontliners and who are out there looking in cars, looking in shops, finding things that they don't really know what they're looking at. So that's just what I wanted to add here. It's really interesting and very necessary. And I also think that, for example, people and neighborhood cops who work around the places in the Brussels antique markets do know a lot more than, for example, people who work in somewhere in a more rural area where they never encounter cultural heritage in the first place. So these things I just want to remind you, think of them. And then another thing I wanted to show before I continue to my last part of the presentation is this art lost register. Now, what is the reason why I show this? The art lost register is also a database with stolen or reported artifacts or at least art. Thing is, this is privately owned by Sotheby's. To be able to access it, you have to pay a fee. But if you Google something, it shows up. Now, if you are a police officer who is now has a report of somebody who's talking about stolen art, Google's stolen art database, unfortunately, you have a 50% chance that this pops up before any other place. And then if they are really not trained, and that's not uncommon, unfortunately, they will not immediately go think, oh, there's an Interpol database. No, because there's also Europol and they don't have that database. And they find this, they might think, oh, this is a place where I have to look. See, I'm just going to illustrate that these people do not have always the right expertise and knowledge. Now, the last part of my presentation is just, remember we said, why are people not sharing? Why is there no data and no reporting? These are the reasons for failed sharing. Now, the biggest one is actually the legal barriers. There is some data protection constraints, but usually between private partners, not necessarily between law enforcement agencies. But the legal barriers are real. And just like we heard today, if you need to communicate with a nation like Russia and the nation does not communicate, it just stops, right? There's also a lot of other legal restrictions and people who do not communicate because of certain international agreements that they are all yes or not following, so that's the main one. The same thing about an unclear mandate. So, for example, I work, as I said, with local police. It's actually the federal police who's doing investigations. If you talk to me, I cannot proceed with the investigation. So it's always like changing mandate. And then afterwards, it may go to Interpol or Europol or all the liaison officers. It is kind of complicated. The problem with the standardized formats we talked about, so we want to really push the object idea, but if it's not or inconsistently applied, you do not really describe the same objects. Same thing with poor data interoperability between systems. If they cannot communicate, you're going back like 50 years because you have to like write everything and explain everything. And then you have all these technical limitations as well. And then you actually have, and unfortunately I need to be critical against the European Commission and a lot of the projects that they have, sometimes you just don't find your way. Because, and I apologize for miswriting prism. I should have written at least that word right. But so you have like, should I go to a handbook, or do I need to go to another platform, or do I need to take pictures and upload them? Where am I supposed to go find my information or make my next move? It's not always easy, and we need to be aware of that. So, especially if you're higher up, as I said, a helicopter vision. If you're higher up in the echelons, you need to know, like, how can we make it easier for people who are either citizens and law enforcement to find their way in this wood of information. Now, a few more things. Sometimes you just don't know who your contact points are. And even if you do know, in Europe, it's sometimes much easier to know who is your colleague and afterwards make the administration all right, because that takes so much longer. But if you don't have contacts because you've never done this before, it's very hard. Again, is it worth it? And then at the last part, which I don't have to really explain a lot, it's not always a priority for the governments and the law enforcement agencies, unfortunately. And that's more politics than anything else, so I'm not going to talk about it. I am going to leave you with this little story. As I said, let's say you have a government building. There is art decorating the walls all over. But the minister in question, he is now retired. And he takes things home with him because now, it was on his wall for 30 years. It's his, right? So nobody's going to put it up here, but still it ends up in a car somewhere, right? So how are we going to investigate this? Where is the chain? Where is the data? Where is the sharing? Where are the results? Unfortunately, it's not a happy ending, but I can give you a few tips and tricks, which is always the same thing. If you talk about prevention, inventory, describe your objects, send your photo, make photos. Also prepare yourself. What if you have to go to the police, just like I said before, know where you want to go to, who you want to talk to, and who your experts are. That's my presentation for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Questions? I have one.
Yeah.
Connection with your last slide, that from the perspective of the heritage institution with limited staff and funding, where is the best place to start from developing data system or with building relationships and partnerships?
I'm a human factor person, so I do think that technology is very important, but it's supposed to serve us. So I would start with the human factor, just prepare people, give them an idea of what you're protecting and why, and also tell them what you should do in case something goes wrong. One of these answers will be, we need maybe a better system, or it has to be in the inventory, but it starts with the need to know, the need to perform.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, yeah. Where's
the microphone?
Okay, I am the microphone. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I was wondering whether you could elaborate a little bit on how you prepare your police as regards the fight against illicit trafficking of cultural goods. Do everybody get trained? What is the frequency? Do you do that at local level, national level, regional level? So if you can elaborate a little bit on that. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. So the answer is no, there's not the preparation that you would like. That is because Belgium has, just like many countries, a lot of separate local police forces. So in one local police force, it's dependent on that chief of police how to prepare themselves. The federal level is actually the one that is not really doing investigations. They're more like, the American FBI, like once you really have to go abroad, you have to go through them. Now, in my police department, we do have a lot of awareness and preparation because everybody's aware, fortunately, that we are part of GRACE and that we are making an effort. We are like 1,300 people. That's like the third largest precinct of the country. And they are aware. And what does that mean? That does not mean that we give everybody their own specific trainings, but we do referrals really well. So we have a lot of dedicated teams. So we have dedicated teams for hate crimes, but also for people who report this type of things, even if they don't really know what they say. They're like, this smells like something we have to tell Kim. So that's good. That reflex is really great. And then we can connect inside and get to the experts at hand. So basically, what do we have? We have a unit that does robberies and theft. They have a few people who specialized in this, and then they also connect with a network of people who are more in the know, and it's based on referrals.
And can you elaborate also on possible connections of different types of crimes? Because I think that at the international level, we are more and more aware of the fact that it's all the same networks. So have you proof of that? Do you see the same patterns? Is there anything that you can share?
I can agree that it is connected. Just like I said in the beginning of my presentation, so we do know for a fact that stolen artifacts and especially art is being used within organized crime families to either pay between themselves. It is also used for kidnapping and it's used for negotiation, so that is a fact. We also know that usually they don't do only one type of crime. So if you move drugs around the world, it's more not just likely, it's normal that you also move the other things around the world. Do I have numbers? Not really. Also because I'm in the preventive part of everything. The moment it does get stolen, it goes to the organized crime colleagues of mine. But unfortunately, it's not something that we can really advertise in big letters everywhere, but it is more or less the same type of people. The only difference is that you also have a lot of fraud going on. So the fraud part with the falsifications and the stealing and the banks and the money issue, that's a whole different department, which is money laundering. And then maybe one more, that is the war aspect, a lot of looting in war areas, war crimes. That is usually part of the military, which makes it even harder because they are the ones in charge of the investigations when you're talking about Ukraine, Syria, Afghanistan, so Iraq. That's the army in most countries. It's not even the police. So it's kind of all over the place, unfortunately.
More questions? No. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Kim, very much.
Thank you.
And applause. Nii. Ja nüüd me siis
And now
suundumegi Kimi mainitud
we will move forward,
relvakonfliktide ja sõdade piirkondadesse.
looking into regions of war and armed conflict. Online, Madison Leeson is going to join us.
Hello, Madison.
Madison is based in Oman.
I introduce you in Estonia and then you can start it. Ja ta räägib meile siis
And she will be telling us about the NABU Project, the patterns, the risk indicators, and the online trade in Iraqi Antiquities.
Siis ta tutvustab seda meile siin avalikult.
So she can now introduce this project to us because it is already an ongoing and almost completed project. So Madison, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Madison Leeson. I'm the director of the research and development firm Tech. And today my topic will be a little different than the ones that we've seen because I will be focusing on the online trade in Iraqi antiquities, but I hope you're able to take something away on the use of open data for investigating the circulation of cultural goods online. So the NABU Project is a 12-month digital research initiative focused on documenting the trade in cultural goods on Arabic language and niche marketplaces. Data collection uses Python-based web scrapers, and analysis is conducted using a combination of computational and manual methods. We're providing data and reports directly to law enforcement and heritage actors on the ground in Iraq, with the goal of limiting the amount of undocumented cultural goods that are being sold online. Because our initial focus is on Iraq, we defer to national legislation to define what is an illicit antiquity. And for our research, Iraqi law considers a cultural object older than 200 years to be of national significance and requires registration with the State Board of Antiquities and Heritage, as well as special authorization to sell. So when we're exploring the objects being listed online, we pay particular attention to those represented by the seller as being older than 200 years. Our first project output, a report, was published a few weeks ago and concerns the Athar sale marketplace, which calls itself the first Arab market for buying and selling ancient artifacts. On this platform, users list objects for sale in one of the categories shown on screen. For the purpose of our research, we've gathered data on all active listings from all of these categories except old cars, for obvious reasons. The platform also includes an archaeological site map, which you can see in the background image of this slide, which obviously is quite concerning considering the fact that this is a marketplace for cultural goods. We collected data 3 times, on February 2nd, February 16th, and March 2nd. And this table shows the number of listings in each category on each of these dates, as well as each category's share of the total and growth during each 2-week period. While overall listings increased by about 7% over the 4-week period, growth was disproportionately concentrated in numismatic and philatelic material, so coins and stamps. These listings expanded by 13% across the 3 scraping rounds and increased their market share to almost 50%. This indicates consolidation of the marketplace around portable, easily monetizable heritage goods. And despite all object categories growing throughout the period, the relative size of each decreased to accommodate the growth in listings of coins and stamps. From a trafficking theory perspective, the increasing concentration of listings in numismatic material reflects a common pattern in illicit and semi-illicit heritage markets, which is the prioritization of small, portable, high liquidity objects that are easy to transport, conceal, and monetize. Coins, especially when they're being sold individually rather than as a collection, function as low-risk commodities within gray markets, allowing sellers to operate at the blurred line between licit collecting and potentially illicit circulation. There are over 22,000 registered sellers on Athar sale. However, most of these accounts have not listed any objects. And one thing we're particularly interested in is high volume seller accounts because of the role that they could theoretically be playing in active trafficking networks. The table on the left side of the screen here shows the 20 highest volume accounts and indicates the country where each is based. The top seller, for example, has 219 listings and is based in Egypt. The second most active has 126 listings and is based in Morocco, and so on. The graph on the right shows the geographic distribution of all seller accounts with more than 10 listings. Egypt, as you can see, clearly dominates, followed by Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Syria. Interestingly, we also see several accounts based in Austria and Mexico. But what might stand out to you the most is that no high-volume seller account is based in Iraq, which was the focus of our research. Let me assure you that there are still dozens of sellers based in Iraq, but the data suggests that these individuals are more opportunistic and unlikely to be involved in high-volume trade, at least on this platform. We examined listings from sellers based in Iraq, and as you can see, they don't diverge too much from the platform average in terms of what objects are being listed for sale. Iraqi sellers tend to list more jewelry, books and manuscripts, and miscellaneous objects than the platform average. But this data should be taken with a grain of salt because we noticed objects are frequently miscategorized. For example, we came across a listing of multiple Assyrian objects, or what at least are being presented as Assyrian artifacts, but it was categorized under paintings. This actually supports the idea that Iraq-based sellers on Athar sale are more likely to be opportunistic lay people rather than experienced professionals who are familiar with antiquity market norms. In our report published a couple of weeks ago, we offer 4 case studies from Iraq sellers that display certain traits that suggest they are illicit cultural goods. These traits are present to varying degrees across the entire data set of nearly 6,000 listings. So we've used these case studies to contextualize a consolidated list of risk indicators that can be used to flag potentially suspicious listings. In the interest of time, I'm only going to discuss one case study today, which you can see on screen. These 2 images, which have been blurred for the purpose of public dissemination, allegedly depict a complete manuscript of a 1,000-year-old Kufic Quran being sold from Iraq. The listing exhibits 5 potential risk indicators. The first, obviously, is that the object is being presented as an antiquity, much older than the 200-year threshold for illicit cultural goods in Iraq. In addition to this, there is a total absence of provenance documentation, limited descriptive information, and limited photographic documentation. The listing also doesn't include a price for the object. Rather, the seller has provided a WhatsApp number and has asked prospective buyers to contact them directly. These indicators were also observed across the wider dataset, suggesting common trends in how cultural goods are presented in informal markets. It's also worth noting that this is this seller's only listing, and the manuscript does not appear to have been advertised on other open.
Ma loodan, et kohe ühendus taastub.
Am I back? Okay, this slide shows the final consolidated list of 10 risk indicators derived from the research data and framed by our case studies. You can see some images of other objects from the case studies shown here on the right. Beyond having individual merit, these indicators frequently appear in combination, as we saw in the previous slide. Listings exhibiting multiple indicators obviously present a higher level of risk than any single feature alone. This is particularly important for marketplaces such as Athar sale, in which amateur and opportunistic sellers may inadvertently demonstrate signs of illicit trade through ignorance of market norms, which is also something that we've seen in previous presentations today. For this reason, indicators are best understood as tools for prioritizing further review rather than as evidence of illegality. Indicators also vary in their evidentiary weight. Some are more directly linked to potential legal violations, while others, like limited descriptive or photographic information, are not inherently suspicious, but support an overall risk profile. We concluded our report by offering some recommendations to the various decision-making actors relevant to this work. For the Athar sale platform managers, we recommend strengthening listing requirements to require sellers provide minimum information, such as proof of legal ownership and selling rights, provenance details, geographic attribution, and clear images. The Athar sale website also mentions a prohibited materials policy, but this policy can't currently be found on the website. We also suggest implementing seller verification for sellers listing antiquities and archaeological objects. And lastly, of course, strengthening collaboration with national authorities and establishing a reporting framework for suspicious listings. For policymakers, particularly in Saudi Arabia as the apparent governing jurisdiction of Athar sale, we recommend requiring platforms implement due diligence measures for cultural property listings, which could include a certification process through which platforms can demonstrate their adherence to national laws and best practices. For law enforcement and cultural heritage authorities in Iraq, we suggest prioritizing online platforms based on the risk they pose to the Iraqi cultural heritage ecosystem. While this research does provide useful insight into the characteristics of potentially problematic listings, the results of this study actually suggest that Athar sale is not widely used by high volume or particularly active sellers based in Iraq, despite higher levels of activity in other regional contexts like Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Iraqi authorities may therefore consider prioritizing platforms and networks with stronger presence of Iraq-based sellers while maintaining only light touch monitoring of athar sale. We also suggest using the identified risk indicators as a screening tool to prioritize investigations into possible illicit activity. In addition to these targeted recommendations, there also emerged a set of suggestions which are already recognized as good practices among practitioners working on the illicit trade. And so the findings of our research just reaffirm their relevance rather than frame them as new recommendations. For example, buyers and collectors should exercise due diligence by requesting provenance documentation and verifying the legal status of objects prior to purchase. At a broader level, addressing these challenges requires greater coordination across platforms, researchers, and authorities, including the promotion of shared standards and collaborative approaches, as again we've seen earlier today. This includes further efforts to standardize indicator frameworks to enable interoperability across studies, develop automated or semi-automated tools for identifying high-risk listings at scale, and consistently incorporating legal contexts into analytical approaches. And throughout, it is essential that this work is based on strong ethical data practices, including anonymization, the avoidance of harm to individuals, and careful handling of sensitive information. On the right side of this slide is a QR code, which will direct you to the NABU Project webpage, where you can read more about the project and access our final report, which is available in both English and Arabic. Underneath that is a link to our GitHub repository, where we've put all the code used for this research, as well as the research data set. But this public data set has been restricted with identifying information like URLs, seller names, and phone numbers, either removed, partially redacted, or pseudonymized. If you're a researcher, heritage organization, or law enforcement, we're more than happy to share the unrestricted data set with you. My email address is also here on screen, so please feel free to get in touch if you'd like to discuss anything further. I want to thank the organizers so much for including me in this conference, and I'm really sorry I wasn't able to be there with you in person. Thank you to the other speakers as well. It's been a pleasure to follow along over these 2 days. Thank you so much for your attention, and I welcome any questions or comments if we have the time for it.
Thank you very much. I looked. Is anybody here? Yes, Jaanika.
Thank you for this very interesting project. How do you define a semi-illicit cultural heritage object?
Yeah, it's a good question. Semi-illicit would apply to cultural goods that are able to be legally bought and sold in one legal context, but not in another. For example, in our recommendations to the athar sale platform managers, we suggest, of course, that they implement these restrictions on sellers, but it's unclear whether they would need to abide by Saudi law, considering athar sale is registered in Saudi Arabia, if they would need to abide by their own individual legal jurisdictions. For example, Iraqi sellers are bound by Iraqi law, Syrian by Syrian law, and so on. Cultural objects are also, kind of gray objects because in many cases it's not the object themselves that's illicit, it's a lack of documentation or falsified documentation. And so I only say semi-illicit to clarify that I don't believe there is a clear distinction between legal and illegal in every context.
Hey, hello, thank you. A very interesting presentation.
Question from you. Yes, one there also.
Me?
Yes.
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. I just wanted to ask, what do you think, what will be the lifespan of your recommendations, what you're doing? Like, what will happen with them, and what is the ideal where you would like to go with them?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's something that was really front of mind because a lot of times projects like this result in recommendations that are just really idealistic and not really feasible in practice. The guiding objective of this project is to provide data for law enforcement and heritage actors so that there's no need for them to invest in kind of expensive, complicated technologies, do additional training. We're really trying to make it easy for them. And so we have tried to define recommendations that are feasible, actionable, that are also, we believe, in all of our best interests as well. Athar sale, for example, they do mention this prohibited materials policy, and so it does seem like they want to restrict the objects that are being sold on the platform. As we saw earlier, too, these platform managers don't want to be implicated in criminal activities, obviously. And so we are kind of working towards a shared goal. For Saudi policymakers, they're already working on regulations in this space, and so we hope that this data supports them. Iraqi law enforcement, these recommendations are really, reasonable for them. They can be implemented at very little cost. And so this was definitely a priority to make sure that recommendations are practical and can be implemented.
Thank you for the presentation. I actually had a similar question to that of Agnes. As regards the origins of the project. So who funded and who commissioned the study, and whether you have any leverage vis-a-vis the Saudi authorities, because I noticed that one of the recommendations was also directed towards them, whether you think that they will actually have appetite to implement these recommendations.
Mm-hmm. The project was financed through internal funds of Turath Tech. We have applied for additional grants and funding support, which we hopefully will find out about in the next month. But at this point, it is internal funds. And we are also in contact with the Ministry of Culture in Saudi Arabia. We shared the report with them. We also participated in a conference that they organized in Riyadh in the fall. And they appear very willing, very open to the information, grateful for the data. I think that there's a strong possibility that it will result in something tangible. I hope so.
Yes.
Thanks for this. It was really nice to see the data. I was wondering, how long did it take you to get from the start of the project to the start of the data collection? Or maybe how long, now you've done the hardest work, how long would it take to adapt this to other markets?
Thank you for the question. It took just a few weeks from the beginning of the project until we had a working data collection tool. And it probably could have been faster, but we really wanted to check all of our bases, make sure that certain technical measures are implemented to not put any strain on the Athar Sale website, and to make sure that we're only collecting the data we need and nothing unnecessary. And we plan to use these tools with relatively minor adjustments to target other Arabic and niche marketplaces throughout the rest of the year. Our initial goal was to focus on a different platform in each quarter, but the data set from Athar Sale ended up being so rich, and there's so much in it that we haven't looked at yet, like, for example, the archaeological site map, that we're still continuing to work on it now to analyze the data. And then around June or July, we'll shift focus to other marketplaces.
Thank you so much, Madison. And I hope we can meet here in Estonia in some time.
I hope
Bye.
so too. Thank you.
Yeah. Ja nüüd jätkame siis tänase päeva viimase ettekandega. Ma palun siia Peeter
Time to give the floor to our last speaker today, Peeter Marvet.
Võib-olla on teile tuttav.
Maybe you know him.
Selle, et kui on mingi probleem, näiteks mingi pilvega või
if there is a problem with a cloud or something, then Peter Marvet is invited to speak. He himself calls himself a technocrat, but now he's also working for the Central Criminal Police. And his title is How to Explain Heritage to a Stochastic Parrot. Stochastic parrot. Excellent English translation. In Estonian, it's a bird, not a parrot. Excellent translation, says the speaker.
Ei. Minuga on alati tähendab see, et tähendab asjad, kas tähendab
You know, it always happens to me.
hakkavad tööle või lõpetavad.
The equipment is operational or not with me. It's my impact. Okay, very briefly, my history. It's a diverse history. You see, I've done everything possible. And this allows me to express my opinion of very many different aspects. I'm speaking as a citizen, Marvet, but actually I work in the Central Criminal Police. I'm intelligence analyst. I focus on similar issues as the previous speaker. My focus is on financial cybercrime. And here are three topics. Always good to have three: open risk, development risk, and AI risk, and opportunities. Openness. I would start with openness. Talk about crimes here, illicit trafficking, then my daily work focuses on criminal platforms. Quite often people think, okay, what is there to take from web? But we shouldn't be too concerned that criminals can't find a way to use us. Well, they will.
See, et sult on vähe võtta, on see, et kui ikkagi miljon inimest on vähe võtta, siis tuleb ikkagi
there are million inimens who don't have much to be deprived of. Well, you take a little and you get a lot from 1 million people. So what should we look for? And I thought I will bring some examples. You've probably seen them. It's an eye-opener.
Ehk siis klassikaline see, kuidas tuleb teile kiri selle
kohta, et SMS messages, you have a parcel and you are asked to contact. Okay, Smart Post and Omniva, but do you see any difference if you compare the Estonian text? Country of origin, yeah, differs. What else does differ if you look at it? It's a SMS on the left and iMessage on the right. So different tools and too little attention is turned to this aspect. SMS, it's Telia and Tele2. level for us, but iMessages are much more complicated. But what will happen if you enter the information and pay the euros to provide your address for delivery to the post office? If any of you is responsible for communication, then always think about it that your communication will not be similar to the criminals' communication. Yeah, you still get emails from companies which are difficult to understand whether it's legal or illegal. But in iMessages, and if you had filled in the previous form, you would have a text like this available, provides the most complete and powerful synchronization source code, supports many regions and will gradually operate from regions. This fishing journey ends up. And here you can see Genius Panda Sync Shop. So you can enter here, click a button, and fishing is starting. You don't need any cybercriminal training. It is all available. There are training videos how to become a criminal. What country to target, what kind of service to target. It's like a shop. You can choose between different cookies. And here you can also different fishing portals. You can pick what country you prefer. And there are new generation Chinese services. You take a web page, then use AI and create a phishing page. And it gathers everything from the original site. And there is also a training video. And on you go. But my question is, how do they make money from all of this? Okay, you enter your credit card data, and it's not €3 or 300 or more euros, which is taken from your account. No, that's a much more interesting plan. There is a telephone farm somewhere in China. I haven't launched a video, but actually then you would see how algorithm works, collects SMS. This is from where the iMessages come. Shopkeepers will say, okay, I've got 500 phones and they come from the farm and it's fresh goods. That's fresh goods. How to make use of fresh goods. Solution is here. That they won't take money from your phone, but your wallet is added to the wallet of the phone in China. They will take the 30 to 40 days. By that time you forget that you have made a suspicious transaction with your phone. You check the forgotten. Here you can see phones. Right, you can see 30 phones with 6 wallets. It's all packaged. DHL will send it wherever possible. So you go to the shop, take a Chinese credit card phone. If one card doesn't work, take another other card and it doesn't work. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got a wrong phone. And take another phone. And this is the way it's paid. And for me, this procedure was amazing. Well, entering your credit card data somewhere is one story, but this was a major surprise. I don't have a good demonstration for this case. It's one more thing. You don't have to order a phone from China. You can have an app. Don't do it. It would be illegal. Then you can use your phone. You have a subscription here, and you pay via credit card, which is in a phone in China. You pay 50% of the amount asked in the stores. Well, this is a level in criminal world, the cyber criminal world. That's innovation, development, new solutions to move around money. That's different ways of getting money from different people. Daily, in my office, I'm surprised of the new innovative solutions they have discovered. So can use data in such a way which is beyond our imagination. I have here a couple of examples. Look at it. It's a GeoGuessr. It's possible to tell where does this picture come from. Sometimes in media there is information of discovery of cultural heritage. Is it a hobby to have such pictures available? GeoGuessr has a fee. But we have also different kind of information. Public sources, HDR, Public Document Register. It's difficult to use. It's just old software. But then there was a guy, Karl Ers, made karlers.com web app. That's easy search, brings together all different sources, and it's very comfortable to use. You can open them, use them. You don't have to download these documents. What to learn from this experience? You can't really dream of what anyone can do with your information available in the web. Bypassing or circumventing security measures is a service. Like a wallet seems to be an extremely safe crypto, whatever. That's a service. You want to do fake accounts, use fake documents, there are guys to do it. Where do they get their phones? Oh, there are SIM farms, people who sell all these accounts. It's a long chain. And to launch a criminal platform doesn't need any big investment. Maybe $100 a month would be a fee, and you can become operational. Now, phase 2, development. We are used to a simple apps. Browser, and there was a back end sends a page to front end, but there are quite web pages
server tegelikult ongi lihtsalt selline
where the server is just to deliver information. It uses JavaScript and uses API. So I like positive hacking, and what's interesting here, I can script from my computer and ask via API what I need. If we take Norra, Iceland, Liechtenstein, financial specialist then asked, is it possible to get an overview in Excel of different projects? But this is not possible with the system he had. But then I used a different solution, and the solution was solved, and I got a piece of cake. And now there are agents. We can take a number of them and ask how can we transport from web the information into Excel. Well, the previous speaker talked about scraping marketplaces. Actually, the same is possible in this case. And the more we have this system, the more we have to consider that the usage should move from single inquiries to mass processing.
Mõni päev tagasi teatas WordPress, üks tuntud blogiplatvorm, et nende lehtedel on olemas viide sellele, et tehisintellekt võiks küsida mugavamat loetavat versiooni. Ehk siis nagu näha, siin on olemas selline tore hey agent, sinine tekst selleks ju.
For a more easily readable version. So you don't need to scrape this page just for any reason. You can just look into the content of the articles, add some parameters there, and you can find the same content in a more, let's say, digestible way. So it's more easy for you to process it. So what is being developed? You can see there on the side of the threat intel that somebody has combined together something indicating all events taking place all over the world. You don't find anything useful here. It just looks kind of very, very nice to the young people nowadays. It's very attractive for them. Another intelligence platform for AI. Well, once again, it compiles all the newest pieces of news and gives you an overview, which is much more easily comprehensible. And of course, we have all the tools necessary to create all these opportunities. But of course, there are threats involved in all of this. And I have seen that several of my colleagues and people also elsewhere use AI to create simple solutions to visualize information, which before was somewhere in an Excel table or a text table, and it's very useful. But there's a lot of issues involved in this. Actually, especially when we're talking about people who are not in this in depth, who have no idea what is going on in the background. And you can see the sentence here, never fucking guess. This was the order. And that's exactly what I did. So this is from yesterday's news. It deleted so a database for some kind of a rental service provider was deleted, and it just happened somehow. And it describes exactly, yes, we made this mistake. It describes it with such precision. Don't forget that the use of systems might change. It might not remain the same for which it was designed. Users find new ways to search for information which the existence of which they had no idea. And no one has carried out a risk analysis. Nothing has been done regarding data protection, security, the load. And now coming to the AI risk, how to understand what is this stochastic parrot. It is the virus of thought. How to explain this? I would like to tell you a story about Anton Markov Tammsaare. Know that officially his name is something different, but I'm going to tell you about Anton Markov Tammsaare. The Markov chain is not AI, it's just a simple option based on which I can explain to you how this AI functions and how it can create all these texts. So let's take that we have some kind of a text amount. Let's say we have a text from a book. We take just one random word, and then we have calculated what is the possibility of for the following word. Let's say good morning is something we say much more often than good day, right? Because we usually say good morning, not so much good day. So 66% is the chance that that's good morning, and 33% is the chance that it's a good day that they're going to say. Let us now have a look at Anton Hansen Tammsaare, the Estonian author's book, Truth and Justice. This is the full text of his book on the Estonian author. You can see about million units here, I think, million letters. And I created a password generator just to take out these interesting words from these texts. And I realized that these 4 word phrases seem to have a connection with this specific book that I just referred to. What if we took a 25-word sentence from here? Does this sound like something from that book, from that author? When you look at it, does it sound like something you would recognize from that Estonian author? The third sentence? Here there's a reference to a name which you do find in the actual book, Pearu, so that's a simple one. But what about this one? You can also find this name here, for instance. So these are just randomly chosen words with the help of the Markov chain, the 25 words, and there's a 50% chance that they give you an idea of the original text. Why is this important? Why am I telling this? Because when you look at this, you can see that we are really, really easily willing to believe everything that is created. I'm not just talking about manipulation with images, but if somebody sends us a report, some kind of technical information, then we tend to believe that it is true, it is authentic. But I call it this virus of thinking, a virus of thought. There's a very big chance that somebody sees something which is automatically put together and considers it to be a very good report. Maybe this is the time to fire that analyst. And when you look into the actual content, you really realize that it's very difficult to check all of it. Means that it is just it means that I just have to do a lot more work, to put it that way. But we have to be able to assess whether it's a valuable master or not based on how it is put together. We look at how it is formulated, structured, and this is something that has become so much cheaper over time. And a positive example for you.
So I'm in France, it's 1518, and I will be honest, from a distance, I did think this was like medieval Coachella or something. Yeah, this is not Coachella. This is the dancing plague of 1518, and it started with just one woman. Nobody could explain it then, nobody fully can now. So the city actually hired musicians to keep them going. They actually thought dancing would stop the plague. This is the worst party I have ever been at. Oh, he is completely gone. He doesn't even know I'm here. Okay, so I actually rewind a whole month to speak to the woman who started all of this. So can I ask, why did you start dancing?
I do not know. My body, it just moved. I could not stop it. I could not.
So basically, she invented the viral dance trend, except nobody asked for it and people literally died. This is where the physician works, apparently. Excuse me, what do you think is actually causing this?
Hot blood. The summer heat has stirred a toxic humor. The dancing expels it.
So your treatment is more dancing?
And music accelerates the cure.
He is so confident, it's actually terrifying. They're taking them to a shrine now. It's kind of the...
Okei, tegemist on siis Glow versus History.
So this is Glow versus History channel. It's a recent internet phenomenon. The positive thing is that there are not criminals behind this, but a person with artistic tendencies who has tried to look into these various historical concepts and about how to visualize it, and he has become very good at it. Very good at prompting this. But what about the findings here? We saw a nice young lady talking. We were attracted by it. I think it was about a 1-minute video. And the YouTubers are very good at producing something like this. But how to teach the understanding and meaning of the content? This is the biggest question. So I don't want to say that The memory institutions should start making 60-second TikTok videos, but you have to think about that this is exactly how information is contained, just like regarding the Markov chain. Which I told you how to calculate the averages. So we now saw an average information about what it could be telling you about this dance epidemic or how it was called back in the day. But this is now the end of my presentation. We have a panel coming up and then we can probably dig deeper into all of this.
Aitäh sulle, Peeter. Kas
thank you, Peeter.
Kellelgi küsimusi?
Any questions?
Et võib-olla me siis
kutsuksin
sind hoopis spekuleerima.
Perhaps you're willing to speculate a bit.
Kui me mõtleme nendele andmetele.
When I think about the data,
mis on siis pärandiasutustes,
that heritage institutions have, we're all open, all this data is open. You have a complete view of all of this. What kind of threats should we see here, or are there any threats involved here if all the heritage data is digitally available? Well, I think that there should be hope that at some point these storybirds do create videos telling an authentic story about us, that it is possible. So in that sense, it is good if the information is available and accessible so that it's possible to produce this. But in addition to this, I have to think about whether this information might also have a dual use, a different kind of use than what we had in mind. And I'm not saying that we should keep this information covert, no, but I have to consider what this accompanies this information, what kind of meta-level information is accompanying it. Do we know where it is exactly? Can this help to somehow, in case of the robbery in Louvre, there was already the physical question there, but the same information that Kim referred to, and then you categorize, put the information into catalogs. This is good also for the other side. It's possible for them then to scrape and to investigate and to plan their next steps. Because when I look into cybercrime, then what this was the Osper malware attack. They started with 3 months before. They were scanning numerous websites, found some kind of issues here and there, and it was not an attack on one Estonian company. It just happened to end up in that large format scaling. And there was this one issue that they were looking for, and based on that, they were found. And the same goes for all of your systems. They are vulnerable not because you are under attack, but just because you are one of those thousands in the world who has that specific gap there. And by the way, many gaps that we find in some memory institutions have to do with some kind of climate control systems or some kind of automated systems that have to maintain the buildings, something of the sort. So in addition to the actual artifacts, think about your infrastructure. This is what they are targeting right now. I think hackers from Iran are also targeting Israeli companies using some kind of certain technologies, and it is possible that somewhere in our system there we are also using it. So carry out your risk analysis, and not from the aspect of what you created the systems for, but think about what people could additionally do with those systems that you created for a certain purpose. Thank you. Round of applause.